Imagine that wealth were in reach, but only through a job that people thought was low status. Would you take it? Confucius says that he would, but the better question is what exactly he means by if wealth were possible. And if it's not possible, then why he would choose to follow what he values instead of just trying harder to attain wealth. And yeah, let's get straight into it. The Analects of Confucius 7.12. The master said, "If it is possible to seek wealth, I would be willing to be a guard holding a whip at the marketplace. If it is not, I will pursue something that I like." Okay, so we're just going to be going over this phrase by phrase, starting with the first phrase, if it is possible to seek wealth. So the key here is the ambiguity of it. So this can either be attainable, or if it's permissible, or if it's available according to the fitting circumstances. And the other worthy translations that we'll also be looking at here is just a little fun part to see what other translations have to say, and it's actually quite different. So the other interpretations include, and I'll put this down in the description as well, they say wealth as a permissible pursuit, or something worth pursuing, or if one could get rich just by trying. So if it is possible to seek wealth, I would be willing to be a guard holding a whip at the marketplace. So we're actually uncertain about what this role actually is. The Chinese version actually just says, quite literally just, a guard holding whip at the marketplace. So it's not really a title or a position maybe, but we can just assume, and a lot of people have assumed on this, even earlier commentaries, we're just going to assume here that it's a low-ranking role. An ancient commentary from the Han Dynasty says that, using the Rights of Zhou, the book Rights of Zhou, that it might be a person holding a whip to clear the way for a ruler. When a ruler is moving through the street or something like that, a person can maybe hold a whip to get people out of the way so the ruler can walk. Or maybe the ruler doesn't walk. So it could also be a ruler's charioteer, as in someone who holds the whip to control a certain animal to make it go forward to pull the chariot. Or it could just be a guard at the marketplace who supervises the market. But anyways, we just know that it's a pretty low-ranking role. Okay. So, and then if it is not possible to seek wealth, I will pursue something that I like. So pursue, not really pursue, but more like follow. And so it's not pursue in the way that is mentioned in it is possible to seek wealth. So seek isn't the same as what is written in I will pursue something that I like. So it's more like follow. I will follow something that I love or favor or prize, something that's stronger than like. So in order to make things flow better, I'll just get to that a bit later. So let's just go straight into the kind of the synthesizing and analyzing things altogether part. So to clear things up, first of all, Confucius is not being anti-wealth. He is not saying you shouldn't pursue wealth, and he's also not saying the poor is morally better. Nothing like that. Since Confucius does imagine himself taking on this low-ranking role if wealth is actually pursuitable. So it isn't really clarified why wealth can be not possible. And there's actually two main readings that kind of coexist with each other. And so the first one is the more ethical reading, as in wealth can be not pursuable if it contradicts your moral values. So for example, if you can only pursue wealth through stealing, deceiving people, or hurting people, or just any kind of that morally incorrect kind of way, then you shouldn't pursue wealth at all. And this connects to 4.5, and let me just read that to you. Hold on. 4.5, read along. The master said, "Wealth and eminence are what people desire. If you cannot acquire them by proper means, you should not accept them. And poverty and lowly position are what people despise. If you cannot avoid them by proper means, you should not reject them." So, yeah, if you can't get wealth through proper means, then you shouldn't get wealth at all. So the main idea of this reading is that you shouldn't compromise your moral principles. And to put it into simpler words, it's just whatever is bad. So you have a concept of what is bad and what is good. So if you have to do something that makes you leave the good and enter into doing something that is considered bad, then that's compromising your moral principles. So for example, if you can only gain wealth by stealing wealth from other people, as in maybe you're stealing a bank, you're robbing a bank, then, and you think to yourself, so I think that robbing a bank is bad, but maybe I can work out some kind of compromise so that I can steal from a bank. So that's compromising your moral principles, as in you know that doing something is bad, but you're like, but maybe if I just do that bad thing, maybe it's okay. So you can't do that. You can't do that by any means. So that is probably a really obvious reason why Confucius decides to bring up the guard holding a whip at the marketplace kind of thing. So if wealth is attainable through correct means, then Confucius is willing to do whatever it is to attain it. And he doesn't really care whether it's a low-ranking role or a high-ranking role. If wealth is attainable, then he would attain it. So again, he is not saying that wealth is bad. But if wealth is not attainable through proper means, then he's more willing to not attain wealth. And the second main reading is that sometimes wealth can't be attained simply through sheer effort. Sometimes it has to depend on circumstances that are beyond our control. And so when we marry them together, marry the two main readings together, it can be concluded that wealth shouldn't just be the single standard to measure whether a life was good or worth it or not, because neither moral integrity nor sheer effort can actually 100% lead to wealth. So wealth isn't automatically wrong, and we should seek it whenever it is the right thing to do, or if it's when it's an okay thing to do, as in morally righteous thing to do. But we shouldn't sacrifice our deepest commitments to it. And this connects back to the I'll pursue something that I like that Confucius talks about. So Han Dynasty commentary by Kong Anguo says that what Confucius likes or just loves, favors, praises, as in he loves it or prizes it or favors it, is the way of the ancients, as in the moral and cultural correct path, or the way that he loves talking about. And this commentary, this interpretation is pretty valid because Confucius has talked about in the past how much he loves antiquity. So this is essentially just saying if wealth can't be rightly or correctly pursued, then Confucius will begin orienting his life toward learning and the moral path that he loves so much. So on the surface level, especially with this translation, it might sound like it's a comparison or it's a decision between money and pleasure. As in, if it's possible to get money, then I'll get money. And if it's not possible to get money, then I'll just do whatever I like. But actually, it's not like that. So it's actually more like the decision between having an uncertain external reward, this one being wealth, as something that maybe you can get, but it's not 100% assured that you will get, versus something that Confucius feels like will still be valuable even without that external reward, whether it be wealth or external validation or attention. For more context, during this late spring and autumn period, when the Zhou dynasty is falling apart and these regional states are beginning to be more ruled by rulers who aren't supposed to be there and aristocratic families who aren't supposed to be there, educated men who sought public roles could really only depend on whether or not rulers and aristocratic families chose to appoint them or not, or if external circumstances allowed them to. For example, if a war is going on, or if they just like to for some reason. So this kind of talent or effort or merit rarely counted in this kind of appointment, and therefore wealth. So although this is a bit outdated, that doesn't mean we still can't take away very valuable things from this. And one thing that we can learn from this is that effort and outcome, although they are often grouped together, they are, at the end of the day, different things. So we often hear that effort, if you put in 100%, then your outcome will be amazing. But there's one little nuance to this, and that is we really can't determine whether or not it's a success or a failure. And all we can do is put in as much effort as we possibly can, try our absolute best, and the rest is essentially up to fate. And so don't let an outcome that you can't fully control be the sole judge of what you value. And although these attention or praise or public external validation, although they can be valuable evidence of whether you created something good, they can't be the only evidence. And honestly, they're not very good evidence, because this kind of public opinion and these trends, they can often change. And so they can't ultimately tell you whether or not the work that you're doing is worth pursuing further, or if the work that you're doing is truthful. All you have to know is that you did your 100%. You did your 110%. You did your best, your very best. And honestly, that is the only thing that you can control, and whatever comes next is not up to you. So keep trying, keep planning, keep learning, keep refining, but just don't assume that effort naturally gives you an external reward, and that failure proves that you lacked worth or effort. And so for anyone who is building something worthwhile, just know that the question isn't really whether or not success is valuable. Of course it is. But if success was uncertain, because honestly it is, what is the thing that you choose to follow?